You are listening to Radiant Creators, a collaborative project composed of people whose passion, purpose, and dedication requires forging their own unique path of empowerment and livelihood. A Radiant Creator isn't making a living, they are living.
John Hickman of the YouTube channel Primitive Ways is here on Radiant Creators today, and he's definitely a primal Neo-Aboriginal Radiant Creator is what I like to call him. And I think that he's doing some remarkable stuff. And so where do you even get started with somebody like you? You're so unique. I saw John Hickman here on Adapt 2030's channel, David Devine, and you guys had a great chat about stuff. And I had checked your videos out in the past, and you have a really unique way of, I'm going to call it storytelling in your videos. You don't talk, you don't say anything. There, of course, there's sound. How are you teaching in those videos? Is there something like, is there some secret wisdom in those? And by the way, how you doing? And thanks for being on the show.
Yeah, it's good to meet you. Yeah, the idea with the not talking on the videos, I actually copied. There's another channel called Primitive Technology. I don't know if you've come across him. He's the guy in
We
Australia.
have.
I think his name's John Plant. Well, I saw him making videos like that, like, a few years back, and straight away I was like, I really enjoyed it myself. I really like the style. I like the fact that you could just hear the sound of the stones and chopping wood and the birds in the background. So I was just, and I used to look in the comment section as well, and the amount of people that would say, oh, this is, such a nice way of making videos, or people would say, no music, no talking, no problem, just people. And I mean, he's got like 10 million subscribers now. So, I just really enjoyed watching his videos myself. And I just decided that, if I'm going to make some videos, I'm going to do it, going to do it like that. He inspired me really to make the videos. It's, yeah, he kind of got it all started.
Yeah, I think sometimes people can get the two channels confused. I'm sure some people probably saw you come up in a suggested feed, started watching and going, oh, he grew a beard.
Yeah, right.
And maybe vice versa. Yeah, well, there's something about the storytelling in the videos where they are instructional, but they're also great videos that you can hang out and just watch. And there's something great about not having any words in it.
Yeah,
There's something. I'm glad you're doing that because it really is this visual storytelling is, and I mean what you're doing is usually uh, it isn't like it needs a lot of instruction. I mean you are showing people how to do it. How are the questions that you're getting on your YouTubes? It's something I did not do, and I usually look at questions to see the tone of things. uh, how are people reacting? Are you getting a lot of like in-depth questions like,
always,
hmm?
always get questions about the tanning, about, oh, why are you using the egg, or like, why do they use the brains, or what, this or that. I get a lot of questions about that, but my channel's still quite small. I've only just gone over 1,000 subscribers, so I haven't had like too too many questions at the moment. And I haven't really got, I know I've been on my Facebook page maybe like 5 times in the last year. I'm not one of these people that's really promoted myself or put myself out there too much, because I just love being out in the woods and actually doing it all, every day for real. Like, I'm always out doing stuff. I'm either doing carpentry or knife making or forging or doing casting or doing tanning or flint knapping or building or planting some food. Or I've always been a really hands-on practical guy. So I've never really sat in front of the computer and kind of got an Instagram and really got myself out there as much as what I should do. But I'm getting another channel together at the moment, which is actually, I'm kind of really motivated to do, because I'm really into leather work. I love leather tanning, and I really love doing the leather work. So I want to make another channel where I'm doing a hand stitched leather tent, like boots, full clothing, bags, leather hammock, leather tarp, leather bivy bag, sheepskin lined sleeping bag, all this stuff that I'm really, really passionate about. I want to get like another channel going as well.
Do you have the
But
channel?
it's still all early days.
Do you have the channel created yet?
Sorry?
Do you have the channel created yet? Is it?
No, not yet. I think it's going to be called Wilderness Ways Bushcraft.
Mm,
But I haven't sort of actually, I've started filming the first sort of few bits, and I've got all the hides together, and I've been sort of mapping it out in my head how I'm going to start filming it. But it's still just in the beginning stages. Because of everything that's going on at the moment, I'm just planting like crazy at the moment, just getting all my food in, and I've been building pig pens because I've got pigs now, so just been hands-on, getting getting busy.
yeah, everybody's getting busy who's
Yeah.
aware. I'm going to say aware. I'll say it, I don't want to sound egotistical, but aware. And that word is so loaded, isn't it? It's kind of like awake or something like that. But those who are aware, because where I've seen your videos before, and I always liked them. And then you were talking to David Devine, and that's where I saw you interviewing with him. He's a longtime friend of the show, and he's been on like 3 or 4 times now. And we hung out with David over at LakeCon and such like that. So I thought, wow, you are a very unique guest on his show, because something I found is that, and what we're trying to like with the recent interviews that we're doing, what I'm trying to help people do is have confidence at this time. And Radiant Creators, we interview inspiring people to inspire others. That's really what we do, and we try to get that inspiration from an individual and then share that, because we always think that's one of the real keys to success. I mean, if you go to like the bookstore, there's huge aisles on self-help and motivation and such like that. But if they worked, everybody would be wealthy at this point, right? So the thing is, what people really need is just, I think, inspiration. And I think also confidence. And one of the things that I think really helps an individual have confidence is, and there can be a lot of layers to this, but it really is survival skills, knowing that you can survive. And
Yeah.
your channel is very deep, and you're definitely taking it from the deepest primitive level, where you're out there, sharpening a stone to make an axe. That's a great video on your channel where you actually make the axe and you start using it. And how have you found that the primitive survival skills that you've been cultivating, I do believe all of your life, it seems, how do you feel as far as confidence? Like, are you ready for anything?
You hit the nail on the head, really. Like, so many years ago, when you could say I started my sort of journey into becoming more aware, I would sit with myself and get really sort of close to my feelings, and how am I feeling? And there was a recurring feeling that would come up over years and years. This was before I got into bushcraft or primitive skills, but I'd always tap into this feeling of that there's a sense of like worry or concern there, and I pinpointed down to the fact that I didn't really know where to get my water from. If I didn't have any money, I was in trouble. And I literally pinpointed this actual feeling of like, oh my God, that's what it is. I can't actually be, I'm not fully in charge of my own life. I realized that that's what was actually giving me this feeling. And not long after that, I met a friend, I got into bushcraft, and it was starting to, and then when I found the primitive skills, I was realized that, the more skills I'd learned and the more confidence I was getting, this feeling of anxiety and worry it was just all going. And it was giving me my critical thinking back, and working with all the different materials and being hands on. It just it gave me absolute confidence to that I wasn't worried, I wasn't so concerned, and I could be responsible for my life, and no matter where I am, I'm going to be fine. It really, confidence is, but you hit the nail on the head with how the confidence just is taking all of my anxiety away. I had no idea what this anxiety was for years. And I would imagine it's probably rooted with a lot of people. It's it's a very subconscious thing for me. It was like, hold on, I was realized that if I don't have any money, I can't get my food. It literally came to that point where I was like, it's that simple. Money is controlling my life. I'm not in control of it, and I don't like this. And then not long after that, I got into bushcraft, and then I found Tom Brown Jr. And when I saw him speak, I realized, like, wow, this is a guy who actually has done it for real. You know, this guy doesn't need to go to the camping shop and buy his rucksack and buy his knife and actually go and buy his tools from a camping shop. You know, this guy could go anywhere with nothing and make the tools he needs and make everything from scratch. And as soon as I, as soon as I came across him, I was like, oh my God, this guy's the real deal, and I want to know everything that he knows. And, I guess, through my journey of learning lots of bushcraft skills and primitive skills, confidence, absolutely. Critical thinking, it gives you the ability to critical think, because you're always having to work things out and do true thinking. And yeah, peace as well. Yeah, it's given me everything, and inspiration as well. Draw a lot of inspiration from nature. But
Yeah, there's a way I look at it. There's analog life versus digital life, and it
yeah,
seems that in analog life we have, peace, and in digital life we have sort of this disarray. We might have Instagram, we might have technology, but it definitely, I think it stresses us out, because we really are
yeah,
meant to live more of an analog life. And you look at
simple.
how society was like. We used to have records, and records ultimately back then were recorded on analog equipment, and they were an analog machine. Basically, they were this like vinyl tablet that that would vibrate, when the needle went over it, and you'd actually have this real analog sound. And now really all the sound that we hear now is digital. And so there is something about and also Rudolf Steiner, the great, uh, quite the spiritual character, was saying how ultimately technology is used in, you might say, like different ways in different worlds. Like the way we're using it makes us ill at ease, but technology can like it has different evolutions in other places. Like we're capable of using it differently. Like when you get away from technology, what do you begin to feel? Like, could you describe like the you, like right now using technology, and then the you making a stone axe, that like analog existence, which is very primal and real, organic, versus our sort of, ultimately it comes down to a transhumanist existence that we're using right now?
Yeah. I mean, for me, it's all about the simplicity. I've always wanted to live a simple life. I've just always been that way. And for me, um, yeah, I just, if I, it's all in the simple things. Like if I could just, my perfect day would just be, to wake up, have a nice breakfast, have a stroll in the forest, do some hunting, do some skills, hang out with some friends, be with my family, sit around a fire in the evening and have a laugh. A simple day like that to me is the perfect day. And what technology does for me, I find, is it complicates things. It overcomplicates things. But like the difference between making a stone tool for me and the technology is I can see, I can see everything in the stone that I want there with, every part of making it. It's not destructive to the world in any way. Do you know what I mean? It's the materials that just come out of the ground and I'm just shaping it. And when I've finished with it, I can put it down and nobody would have ever even known that I was there. It's where technology, the imprint that we're leaving on the earth because of technology, we have to pull these materials out of the ground and mine them and build machines and superheat these things and press. And that's what it is for technology for me. It's the process these things have to go through for us to hold them in our hand. We don't see that process. We don't understand how much damage that does. So for me, the joy in picking up a stone off the ground and shaping it and doing that is just, for me, it's like honoring nature, because I'm giving back. I'm not harming nature. I'm making something which is completely natural, just using the materials around me and just leaving no damage. It's the damage that does, which is why I'm against technology. And and also it's sort of technology has to be fixed with money normally. You know, you normally have to give somebody some money because then something has to go and be machined, or something has to be going cut for, or you have to go on the internet and buy something. Or what I love about the primitive skills is the materials are just the materials around you. You don't have to buy them, you don't have to order them. If that one's not quite right, I'll just go and find another stone. It's all that side of it which I love, is the, you know, just respect for nature. We're doing so much damage to the world, you know. It's time that we start. Oh,
Oh
thanks for
yeah,
sharing.
and it seems that there was a good deal of our history where we maybe lived in, I'm going to say, more harmony. And what I mean by that is, and something that's been a real, path for me, something I've been studying for quite a while, is our, it's really a term that Arthur Haynes, you may have heard of him. He
Oh, I love
coined,
that guy.
yeah, Arthur
Amazing
Haynes.
guy.
Yeah,
Incredible guy.
yeah, and we interviewed him on the show. He was one of our early interviews, and he called it, Neo-Aboriginalism, basically being the Neo-Aboriginal. Like when were we our most healthy? And and his, I'll call it a theory. It's, to me, it's fact, but the further you go back, the healthier we were before we had any kind of organized society, and before we had uh, steel, all of these things. It's like, if we look at the Romans, they were some of the most unhealthy people on earth. Like, they might have been conquering the world, beating up the rest of the world, but they were unfathomably unhealthy, and a lot of armies couldn't actually defeat Rome, because as it got bigger and bigger and bigger, they would run into plagues on the way and the army would die. It couldn't even get there. So it's just, we were healthier, we were stronger. And one of the things oftentimes, and it's very, it's menacing, but a good thing to do, is if somebody can find maybe look at a picture online if you can't get one, but like a wild turkey carcass after it's been plucked, then look at like a butterball or like a domesticated turkey and be like, sorry, my friend, but you know which side you lean on. You lean towards, you can't tell me that this like fatty is healthy. This one was much healthier. So we were healthier.
Yeah.
And it seems like that whole idea of being a Neo-Aboriginal, where yes, we're going to use the technology that we're using now, but there is an incredible strength we can, especially generationally, that we can start rebuilding, and a much more real and alive life. And that's something that I like about what you're doing, is you're going right to that source and you're living it and you're sharing that with people, which I think is great. And I look at like what life must have been like when they were building the pyramids, this sort of analog technology that they were building. Same thing with Glocky. I always mess up the pronunciation, but Glocky Peki or Glocky, you know what I'm talking about. Glockopeco.
Which one's that? Is it another? It's another one of these big temples.
It's over in it's in Turkey, I believe, and it's called Glocky Peki. And I think they're finding it's like 12,000 or 16,000. It depends on how you look at it. This quite old settlement, and it's quite big. I'm not even sure how big it is yet. And it had amazing hieroglyphs, you could say, amazing stories carved in it, possibly about earth changes. And they have a theory that, well, they just covered it all up, then they moved on. And now, as more people look at it, like Graham Hancock and such, they look at it and go, no, they didn't bury that and leave. It got buried and they're not there anymore. Something happened on Earth back then. There was an earth change, And so along with all that rambling I just did, what do you think life might have been like in societies as they evolve? Like, where do you think maybe we started losing our health, losing our strength, losing our vitality? If our hunter-gatherer ancestors were maybe the most healthy and strong, even though people say they didn't live very long because they had infant mortality rates that are higher than we do, but we were stronger, we were more powerful. When do you think it started going wrong? Where did we kind of start becoming domesticated to the point that wasn't in our favor?
Yeah, I understand. I've never believed that, you hear all this stuff like, oh, we used to die really early. And it's like, how can we have died earlier when we didn't have fumes from cars, we didn't have mercury fillings, we didn't have polyunsaturated fat and sulfamine K and aspartame and sugar and fluoride in the water and glyphosate and all, you know, if we can live as long as what we're living now, then surely we would have lived, you know, a few hundred years old maybe back then. Who knows? But for me, I always think that when our health really changed is when we changed the environment too much, or we were maybe living in an environment where we maybe had to do some kind of quite ancient agricultural kind of things to survive there. Like I've looked at quite a lot of the ancient sites, and I always think that they must have been doing some sort of quite interesting ways of growing food and not necessarily living in a very natural kind of way where, you know, you're just leaving nature to grow back and you go out and forage every day. I look at some of the ancient civilizations and think they must have been doing some kind of interesting farming techniques or permaculture or something like that, which means if there is very severe weather changes quite quickly, they're probably not going to make it. Is where if you live in a very natural setting where you haven't changed the surroundings around you much, it's generally a lot more susceptible to weather change and weather damage. So I think it's when we change our environment too much from the natural environment, that's when our health would start to decline. Because if we have to live off, you know, similar food. I mean, my belief system is that, you know, eating meat and eating organs and having bone broth and eating non-hybridized plant foods and seafood and shellfish, this kind of food to me is a very, you know, it's a very, very healthy way to live. I know sort of like living off a very plant-based diet, depending on what it is, it can be fine or it can have its downfalls. You know, it can be too much oxalates in some food or too much lectins. But I think it's when we change the environment too much, that's when we civilizations either got wiped out or it actually started changing our health quite dramatically. Like I look at some of the hieroglyphs in Egypt and actually think they had really poor health. And I think that's probably because of the diet they were eating. But yeah, for me, if you keep your environment as natural as possible and just let it grow as it should and become a, you know, hunter-gatherer, you're going to stay super healthy. But it's just, yeah, I look at ancient civilizations and think, yeah, that's something, you know, like the pyramids are not natural, are they? You know, they're very, very man-made things. So I'm thinking that the farming the farming that was around then was probably quite similar. It was, you know, not natural.
Yeah, I've always kind of thought that there's something about, and you'll see it in the hieroglyphs, in the carvings of Glakipeki, and of course, like you're saying, in Egypt. And, you know, for one thing, I start wondering, well, how did they do this? Like, why would a hunter-gatherer, why would I call them natural humans, why would you make this thing? There has to be a reason. And the same thing with Glakipeki, amazing structures were built. And I do think that's one of the things that may have messed up humanity some was ultimately farming, was grain,
Yeah.
especially because the thing I think about grain and the thing about modern farming is it's a great way to create cities with very, very specialized skills. You know, it really makes me think about, I think a lot of people right now around the world might be rethinking their maybe at least rural existence. It's like, because as we have our whole like weird pandemic thing going on, you know, whether one believes it exists or whatever they might think of it, a lot of people are starting to like rethink government. They're kind of going like, well, wait a second, you know, like, okay, here's the thing. You go, we all had an immune system for thousands, tens of thousands, millions of years, however long you think humans have been around. We had an immune system that seemed to do fine. Now, starting in January, it stopped working. And we're going to die unless globalists give us tattoos on our forearms and with our ID, and you know, basically herd immunity is now gone. And so people are starting to wonder. And I think it's weird, but where we are now seems like it started back when we began farming, because farming is a great way to create cities and for governments to control people. Like, you know, a city is a great place to control the way people think. control the way they live, take them away from nature. All you've got is pavement. That's it. Pavement and cement and steel. And,
Yeah.
you know, uh, so it's an interesting time, and it does seem like, I know a big thing for me is really reinvigorating that Neo-Aboriginal existence. And like tomorrow we're going to go out and we're going to be picking Claytonia miner's lettuce, and mesquite's not in season here, but it rains mesquite here in the desert. It's an amazing kind. It's like an acorn flower sort of, and it just rains it, and you can pick it. And
Awesome.
yeah, I mean, and grinding it with two stones. No. There's there's some wild crafting organizations here that have hammer mills that you can just dump it in there and mill it so much easier. But it's weird where I guess I'll move on to a different topic. It's just such a plethora of things to talk to you about. Do you feel that an individual's environment naturally grows what they need to live in that environment? Because I came from the Pacific Northwest, where it was like life, green. I mean, just darn near living in a rainforest. It's beautiful, Then now I'm here in Arizona in the high desert. I'm in the Sonoran Desert, different world. And at first I thought, oh my God, I'm on Mars. I'm going to die. This is terrible. But then I realized that the desert rains food. People might not think, but it might not rain, but it rains food. And it seems like where you live, here's the thing. If one wants to feel in harmony with their body, like here I am, body, mind, and spirit, my immune system is attached to God force, I'm powerful. You got to be eating the food that nature is trying to give you.
Yeah. You're the first person I've heard who said that yeah, whatever environment you're in, the stuff is there to keep you alive in that environment. Like if you go somewhere super cold, there's seals around, or, big animals with lots of thick fat layers, and, there's everything there that you need to survive in that environment. And then when you go somewhere really hot, there might be like fruits or seafood or things for the hotter environment. But yeah, I'm totally with you on that. Yeah, whatever environment you're in, there just so happens to be the food that that's going to keep you going best in that environment. Yeah, I'm totally with you on that. Absolutely.
Yeah, and that's the thing where there's a lot of people right now that I think anybody who's been around for a little while, like I'm 50, so I've been around for a little while, and I've done many ridiculous diets. I mean, let's eat just fruit, let's eat just meat, let's eat whatever. If it's a dumbass thing to do, I've probably done it. And I kind of find that one of the things that does bring me sanity when it comes to what to eat is what can you hunt and gather in your area, and to the extent you can get it, and then what you cannot get, simulate it. But it does seem that people in cities are definitely very removed from nature, because in a sense there is no nature for them to eat or experience or touch.
Yeah.
And it just seems like when you're not attached to your body, it's not so great. Well, so what I wanted to ask you about was now we're all kind of practicing what Stuart Wilde, a great eclectic writer, called, silent power. So right now it's quieter. The sky is more clear.
Yeah.
We've got in the desert right now, and it's amazing. We can see and see and see. And nature, because the parks aren't open, they're open, but you can't use the parking lot. So anyway, but if you can go into nature, you don't have to go so far. Nature, and I'll be a little bit eclectic here, is more alive. You can feel, we took some pictures the other weekend, and we thought we were seeing like nature spirits in the pictures that they, because it was like nature is very much more alive. If you enter nature sacredly, then it shows you itself. It's like, do you feel that through this, how do you feel that this silent power, that this mandatory silence that's happening on many levels, how do you feel this is affecting humanity? Because it appears to be, or at least it's affecting some of us very, very deeply.
Yeah. I mean, I personally myself, I'm loving the no cars on the roads, no planes in the sky. I love it. And the air is so much cleaner. But yeah, I mean, it's going to be an interesting thing for everyone. I've heard a lot more people, you know, kind of, I mean, when it's like, for instance, when it snows in England, everyone for some reason says hello to each other more, and is more smiley and chats to each other a bit more. And it's kind of the same with this situation we're in now. Everyone's kind of a bit more like, oh, because everything's a bit on hold and there's something going on. People are a bit more, you know, chatty and a bit more, you know, sort of pulling together. And but yeah, I don't know. It's everyone's going to have a different response to this. I mean, people who live in the city who are filed and walled away from nature, who probably don't even have a balcony or something to go out on, I'd imagine they're probably not finding this a very peaceful time. But then people like me live more out in the countryside. You know, obviously everyone goes out for their daily exercise now, and or goes out for their bike ride. There's a lot more people getting out and going for walks. So I'm hoping that it's going to get people more back into, you know, the peace that nature brings them, hopefully. But the city dwellers, I don't think they're too happy.
No, I don't. I don't think so. And uh, we often hear that it's said, you know, things will never be the same, and a part of me thinks good, because
Yeah.
something that we're seeing now is people being kind to each other. You know, people, communities talking to each other. Like around here, people go out and they drink wine, they go for walks. You know, we're not necessarily supposed to, but the parks all fill up. We have like the lawn chair rebellion. We all sit around and and talk. So it's changing. You know, people are. It's definitely changing. So I think humans, like we always continue. We will continue, but we might, after all this, become much more human. I think there's a lot more whether people like it or not, they're becoming more human. They're
Yeah.
becoming more part of their community. Well,
I
something
think
about
maybe when it
good.
ends, when it ends, maybe, and people have to go back to work, maybe that's when they'll actually kind of go, oh, you know what? I've really enjoyed that peace and quiet. Maybe that'll be the moment when it's over that people will actually suddenly go, oh my God, I actually really liked the peace and quiet and the slow pace of life. You know, maybe that's what it will be when if it does go back to some kind of, you know, normality. Maybe that'll be the moment when people realize how much they like the peace.
Yeah, and I think that there'll be a lot of disappointment, you know, like when it's all over, we'll be like, oh, you know, I think one thing people might miss who like it is just the quiet, because the quiet is hard to explain, but
Yeah,
it is different now. It is quiet and the sky is clear, and it helps us. Well, one of the things I think about the Neo-Aboriginal mindset and the Neo-Aboriginal practice is really reattaching to those human instincts. You know, people can tend to lose their inner dialogue. They can lose their
yeah,
instinct, and these are very, very, very real parts of us. And so, to get out in nature, something you said in talking to David Dubine was, you said, you know, pay attention, life is real.
yeah,
And I think that when you go into nature, especially if you can bushcraft of some kind, you know, whatever it might be, you know, you all of a sudden feel the realness of life. And I think this is a great time for people to get back into that realness of life. Like it's something that you said that I think is really important. Is, yeah, pay attention. Life is real. Like for
yeah.
how many?
That's what nature's taught me. Like that's the biggest thing that nature has really taught me over the years is pay attention. You know, there's spiky things on the ground. There's things you can bash your head on. You know, the stones are really sharp. You've got to know what the environment's doing. You know, it's just everything. You know, one little slip and you could be quite injured. You know, everything. You know, when you're hunting, you know, you could be 20 foot away from a deer and then you stand on a stick and it snaps and the deer hears you and it's gone, and you've just, you know, you've just spent 2.5 hours trying to get close to it. You know, it's just taught me, it's just something that nature's screamed at me over the years, is just pay attention, pay attention. And that's what I find the modern life takes away from us. We can live in such a numb state. You know, the floor's totally flat. You press a button, everything's there for you. You can live in a completely unaware, completely nullified, you know, state, and it doesn't matter. As where in nature, if you're not aware and you're not paying attention, you just get punished. You know, this it's just a result of not paying attention. So yeah, it's the present moment as well, and it's just one of those things that you have to keep training. You have to train that focus. It is like that total focus. Well, I remember saying to David, I know that's why people who do like tightrope walking or people who do really extreme sports, it's because they love that intense focus. And yeah, I like that myself as well, if I can get into that state. But that's something that you can't find in the modern world, you know. Like if I want to go hunting, I can be in a completely focused state for hours and hours and hours, or even sometimes days, where I'm just in tune with the floor, in tune with the wind, in tune with the weather, listening to what the birds are doing, just being focused in everything around with me, in tune with my intuition and my senses. And I can be in that state for hours and I love it. But in the modern world, it's just, you know, there's a noise here or the phone's going or someone's asking you that. It's just very distracting and steals you, you know, robs that focus. And yeah, I don't like it. I like that.
No,
I
I
love that
understand.
focus.
Yeah, it seems like I've always thought that there's a real benefit from finding a spot that is natural. Because I mean, I do realize that everybody's in different places, and for some people this is very easy. It's their backyard, you know, and their front yard. For some people it's much more difficult. But do you find there is an incredible? Well, I'm sure you do, but there's an incredible connection. Life is real when you find some nature that you can do everything in, that you can, you know, be it whatever it is for the individual. I know some people have limited situations, but like for me, it's, you know, but it's about an hour drive, but I can get out to, you know, our public land where I can hunt, gather, spend time, you know, I can make a stone axe if I desire. I can fish. I can everything, you know. And also one of the most important things that I think humans need to feel that life is real, to feel life, is um, eat something, like hunt and gather. I've known some great hunters, and one of the first hunters of animals. And one of the things they would always do is they would always gather. They'd say, you know, what helps me get in tune with the land is to find some wild edibles. And they'll research that, and and say, once I eat something of the land, then the hunt for the animal becomes much easier. So it just seems like there's an incredible, it does so much for us if a
Yeah.
person, you know, harvests those acorns and the mesquite and the whatever it is. I mean, that's what I wanted to have you on, is really to encourage people, because I'm telling you, find something, you know, whatever it is, and go hunt and gather, because you're going to feel different the moment you, the satisfaction is hard to express.
Yeah, you can't put it into words. It's the connection. It's this feeling of connection that you get to everything. Like you say, you eat the plants, or you put your hand in the water. You know, you're out in the environment. You're listening to the sounds. It just reconnects us, because that's the problem with humanity, isn't it? We're just completely disconnected, and we are supposed to be in nature, and you know, all of our senses connected to nature and connected to our environment. And that's where we're supposed to be. You know, fish are supposed to be in the sea, not up trees. You know, human beings are supposed to be in nature, not in the modern world. It's as simple as that. And I just see it as that, you know, we're never going to be right unless we, you know, start going back and living in nature again. I personally truly believe that we're, you know, we're not designed for this world we're creating at
Oh,
all.
yeah, it's like there's an old Germanic saying, peace is hell. And I've oftentimes thought, you know, something else is flat is hell, because like, um, you know, I was thinking about, I'll call it Neo-Aboriginal or natural human exercise. And like, it'd be fun to talk about that. Like one of our, an exercise that might surprise people, and I really think it might surprise them, is people are so used to walking on flat things, We are so, and flat as hell. It is. It's not good for you. If you go out there and walk on trails, do some trailblazing, skip along rocks along a river, across rivers, a person might be surprised how sore that makes their body, and how ill at ease they are with it. And then also something else that is piece as hell, flat as hell. Also, shoes are hell.
Yeah.
Those aren't letting us touch the ground. So one thing I noticed in your videos, you're definitely in shape. And so, like, what is exercise for that Neo-Aboriginal, that natural human? What because they certainly are very, very strong.
Yeah, well, I like to do a lot of different movements. Like for me, like you say, you're walking in nature. The difference between the flat and walking in nature is it's different all the time. So yeah, I always like to do kind of variety of different movements, and I find that's what nature normally offers. But I normally keep in shape. I get in the cold water a lot, and I'm always carrying and lifting, and always moving, always doing stuff. But yeah, you're right. Like just a natural human being in walking around in nature, they're going to be moving their body in so many different ways. It's so much better for us than just going to the gym and just doing this same mechanical movement over and over. It's way healthier for us. Like when I think of all the problems that are existing in our world, like just going back and living in nature, just it sorts them all out. It just we don't have any diet issues anymore, like environmental issues, like mental health would go away. We'd feel connected. We'd have to take care of each other. We'd be aware again. But we have come a long way this time. I think about the journey that we've gone through. We were shaping stones, and then we started shaping minerals like bronze and copper, and then of course we found steel. And it's steel, isn't it, that's kind of led, I believe, is what's actually shaped this world we're living in now. We created these tools and weapons, and they built one thing to another, and then pipes and shields, and eventually we built sort of machines, which has led on to electric machines, and then computers, and large structures, and cars, and electronics. Steel is where I think it is where it all began. The modern world, it began shaping the modern world. It's got a lot to answer for, that steel has.
It's nice, but yeah, it does have its in the way that we've used that technology. It definitely hasn't it hasn't kept us natural. Well, I think there's something about the mental fog that people are walking around with. I tend to just call it being a natural human. That's a human who's living that to the extent that they can, incorporating some Neo-Aboriginalism, whether it's hunting and gathering, whether it's it can be uh, learning herbs. It can be, there's so many different aspects of it. I've even found that learning first aid, secondary aid, learning more and more first aid, how to take care of the body. I mean, because we used to be able to do that. It's one of the things, if we look back at these how much has been forgotten, like they called them treaties back then, I think was the term for like manuals of how to fight, how to do swordsmanship, and the martial arts of the time in Europe. And but also there were amazing, and they're online, you can see them, amazing treaties on how to tend to trauma, and how to fix broken arms and such. Like back in the 1200s, 1300s, we weren't naive. We were actually fixing broken people. And
Yeah.
and so we've always known, but it's strange that there's a lot that has been lost, definitely.
Yeah, it's funny, like how people tend to think for some reason that our ancestors of the past were stupid. There's definitely a very, very worldwide belief of that somehow, for some reason, people assume that the humans of the past just had to have been more stupid. And this is not the case at all. Like to live and survive in nature, you have to be highly aware, highly able to critical think, to be, you know, fully responsible. You'd be in tune mentally. You'd be, you know, emotionally stable. You know, there's no way our ancestors were not anything but incredibly intelligent and knew way more than what we do now. Have you heard of Joe Dispenza before?
Oh, I certainly have. I actually do his, some of his, I read all of his books, and I do his meditations at least once a day, a couple of them.
Awesome. Yeah, see, that's all the kind of stuff I know. We've lost so much. I know we're capable of so much more. I've always believed this. I've always known there's more to life, and we're just surrounded by like absolute pure magic. I've always known that, you know. I've never bought into this belief system that, oh, you know, it's a random accident in time. Your life's meaningless. You know, you might as well just go down the mall and buy a load of crap because when you die, the lights are going out. I've never ever believed that. I've always known there's just some magic behind life, and what we're capable of is amazing. And I know our ancestors were absolutely tapping into that magic for sure. Yeah, we're incredible.
Oh, we are incredible, and I think that's a great way to look at it. We are incredible, and we always have been. And uh, a great place to find that is the past. Exactly, when we look at our hunter-gatherer ancestors, and then also even more recently, like I say that I'll link to some of the show notes, and I'll send them to you. The like treatise on first aid. It's amazing. We were not naive. I mean,
Uh,
people we fixed a lot of trauma, because for one thing, um, when there were battles, and this is not a way of looking at it, but if there was no hope for survival after an injury, do you think they would have been able to talk armies into fighting? No. There was triage and such after the fact. Not that I'm saying it was ever a good idea, but one of the reasons they're willing to fight is that there was a chance of survival if you were injured. And more so than most people think. And so getting back to being a natural human, I think it's so important because there's that mental dullness. And something I have noticed is if one spends time in nature, doing something in nature, whether it is, sitting, hiking, making a stone axe, learning to hunt and gather in your environment, um, the, something that has always really struck me is I think the natural human is they're like a deer using a table saw. Because like, I don't know about you, but table saws, they scare the hell out of me. I hate using them. I'm always afraid like this is the day the blade flies out, or there's like marbles on the floor. I don't know. If a person wants to, don't hurt yourself, anybody, but if one wants to learn like Zen, like single-mindedness, be in the now, use a table saw. I guarantee it will be all you were thinking of
yeah,
at that moment. And it's kind of like a deer. So a deer using a table saw to me is the most alert thing in the universe, because you look at a deer and it's so relaxed. It's like they'll be just chilling out. They are really truly relaxed, but they're physically immaculate, the shape that they're in. And they see you, and there can be a hill that's just epic that you'd have to go up, and they'll see you coming. They'll just be like, we're just going to wander up here a couple hundred yards like it's nothing.
yeah,
It's like, oh, I always love to take my little, I know it's not very Neo-Aboriginal, but take my little spotting binocular and like get a little closer and watch animals. And what a teaching that is, because gosh, you look at the deer, and especially antelope, they really are incredible. That energy where you go, you're so buff, you're so fast, you're so in shape, you see me, but you're not concerned. If I get one step closer than you like, you'll take one step away. It's like, wow, that is something I really think that humans would do well to, work actively on recultivating, because I think we live in a world of mental dullness where everything is no more than 10 or 12 feet away. The ground is flat, temperature is always controlled. And really, we think it's nice, and it does feel nice, kind of, but it's also hell. It's kind of
yeah.
killing us.
Yeah, it's the convenience. Like everything's so convenient, you don't appreciate it. Is where when you actually have to go and find your food or go and find your water, like just to wear clothes, just to have a a set of clothes in nature means you either have to weave them or find a lot of hair and spin that into yarn, or you have to have hunted an animal and skinned it and then tanned it and then cut it to the shape and then stitched it together and softened it. Like everything you appreciate is where we're just it doesn't work like that. We're human beings. We need to appreciate the things we work for. We appreciate them. It's where the greed and convenience of the modern world is just, yeah, it's just not a good effect on us at all.
Yeah. And did you ever have this feeling as a kid, or maybe even as an adult sometimes, where something that really engineered my path a bit when I was a youngster? I guess I'm still a youngster. I'm just an older youngster, really.
Yeah, me
But
too.
yeah, I'm just a 50-year-old youngster, basically. I hope, at least. And was I didn't feel alive or at home in my body. I sort of felt like inadequate in all that I did. You sort of had this sense of like shame or guilt, whatever it is, or something. And one of the things that reconnected me, that made me feel like adequate, confident, powerful, I was very lucky that there was forest, there's vast expanse right up the street from where I lived. And being there was how I would get rid of that feeling. So it was funny. There was like the domesticated feeling of inadequacy, where you just didn't feel like you weren't happy in your body, but you spend time in nature, begin to eat things in nature. And for me, it was like, well, squirrels, rabbits, pretty much whatever I could get with my childhood shotgun. Um, but you'd come back to the domesticated world, and it was like you were a transformed being just from a day in the forest. And
Yeah.
have you felt like you've kind of been throughout your life shaking off domestication and feeling more, as you say, like nature is real, but also like the experience of being in your body is real?
Yeah, I love, I love being in nature. I love sleeping outdoors. Just, I find it really difficult to sleep in a house now. I lived outdoors, with no running water or no electricity for about 17 years. So I just got really used to living like that, and it's only been the last 5 years since I've sort of come back to the UK, and I've got a young family now that I've sort of actually lived in a house for a few years, but now I've got some land. I spend a lot of time over at the land. I don't like being in houses. I really like being outside. Just really enjoy being in nature, and I have spent so much of my life like that. Yeah, it's really difficult for me. I don't like domestication.
How
I
did
don't
you
like.
spend how did you spend so many years living
Well,
that neo-Aboriginal existence? You said 17
well,
years.
when I was in my early sort of 20s, I got into surfing and I got the bug. So I quickly, it didn't take long before I was like, right, I'm quitting my job because that's just getting in the way of surfing. And I, was surfing all the time, and then that's how I met my wife. And then not long after that is when I met a friend who I started getting into bushcraft. And as soon as I sort of got a bit into bushcraft and started going camping a lot, it wasn't long before I was just camping every single night. And then it wasn't long before I was like, I just don't want to, I don't want to be in the flat at all anymore. I just want to be out camping all the time. So I built a little underground house in the woods. And then not long after that, we moved out of the flat we were living in, and we ended up living in this little house for about 3.5 years, and just loved living like that. No running water, no power. It was just a little underground house in the forest, and we lived there. And then we moved out of there into another little kind of house that my mate had built because I'd inspired him. And then moved out of there and lived in like another abandoned sort of mansion on this beachfront on the south coast. And then we went from there and lived sort of in another woods. And then we traveled all around Europe, living in woods in France and then a bit in Spain. And then we spent a lot of time in Portugal. So yeah, from my sort of later 20s right through up until my 30s, we've just been traveling and living outdoors and living in forests and in dens and shacks. And I love it. I love living like that. You know, I never thought I was going to have kids, and I never thought I was ever going to be living back in society. Like I was going to live like that forever. But having children has changed changed a
Ah,
few things.
I imagine that has. Well, in a way, I'm glad you did, because that way we have, more Neo-Aboriginal healthy children that are,
Yeah,
that are showing up, and we need that. And then also it kind of, maybe it slows you down a little bit, and now you're sort of, now you've got a YouTube channel, so it's like you had your phone, now it's time to teach others.
yeah.
It's like, well, here's something I thought I wanted to ask you was about. There's another German term. It's called and I always say it wrong. It's like the Weltschmerz, and I
I've
just
not
call it,
heard that before.
yeah, I just call it the Messerschmitt, because I because I can say that, but it's the Weltschmerz. And what it is the Germans call that the world pain, and that there was this pain, there was this like depression that existed within society because it's not right, you know. And I do find that one thing about that the Welshmerks is that it seems that maybe we all feel it, but the way that I find that I can remove it for a time is time in nature, because I start realizing that there's like this division. If you spend time, of course you can meditate, definitely. Like if people, like you mentioned Joe Dispenza, hey, download his meditations, get into, I mean, yeah, it's wonderful. So you can do this in your home. You can meditate. I think you can reconnect. But in nature, um, in meditation and in nature, I would start realizing that, wow, there's an anxiety, there is a stress, there's this world pain that I am experiencing. And it's like somebody jackhammering outside. Eventually you don't hear it. When they stop, you go, oh, you know what I mean? Like you wear a hat all day and you don't realize you had it on until you take it off, And I'm in nature long enough. If you're there, or and in meditation, nature is great. And you go, oh my God, you know, the world smears, Walt Schmerz, the world pain, you go, I'm carrying around an anxiety and a depression that isn't mine. It belongs to society, but not me. Have you ever had feelings like that when you were on your journey while you've been in nature?
Yeah, I mean, I had that really heavy feeling my whole life. I remember being a young boy, and I actually remember the exact moment when I understood the concept of sort of paying rent, or, sort of paying to exist. And I kind of remember being like, huh? That's not right. Like that means you can't just kind of wander around and do what you want whenever. That means you've got to be, doing this thing to earn money to sort of pay rent. So I think for me, that's actually the moment when this sort of slight bit of anxiety started, where it's like, oh, so you can't really just, be then, can you? Because it means you've always got to, sort of do this thing. So it's just what it's what society demands of you. You will have a job and you will do this and you will pay all these bills, which basically means we've now got your time, which and that's what you need, isn't it? You need time to actually spend in nature to get connected. So I've just always had this, I've always known that there's this, that society, once it gets those like hooks into you, it's a bit of a trap, and it doesn't, you don't have the time or the headspace for nature. Um, yes,
And
yeah,
it's, yeah, and it's like meditating. Like when when you need to meditate the most, when you need nature the most, that world pain, that domesticated screech, that's when it's the loudest, and that's when you don't want to do it. Like when you need it most. So it's like the worse it gets, the worse it gets, the worse it gets, the worse it gets, and the more removed you get, to where it just seems like quiet meditation or nature become, like they become repulsive.
yeah. I mean, I'm amazed at how just the difference. Like some people I know, you know, love getting in the woods and jumping in the river and getting muddy and getting cold and getting their hands on. And then I've got other friends that are just, you know, they don't want to touch the ground. They want to be indoors with a shiny iPhone. You know, they're going to order some nice new fluffy pillows that match their curtains. You know, it's just, yeah, I don't know. There's no hope for some people.
Oh,
I'm
I
just going to turn
understand.
my light on because I realise it's getting quite
Oh, go
dark
ahead.
outside now, and I'm
Oh,
probably getting dark.
oh, go ahead.
Ah, that's better.
Okay, perfect. I can see it. Okay, I'm gonna grab something. Give me like 15 seconds. I'll be right back.
Yeah, cool.
Oh. Mm. I guess something I would move into is uh, diet. This is one that, I mean, of course, we're not nutritionists, or at least, well, I'm not a nutritionist, so I can't give anybody advice on what to eat, and I really wouldn't. But something we were talking about is, you know, where you live, where you are in the environment, it's trying to feed you the perfect food to work there. And it's funny, like here in Arizona, in the Sonoran Desert, um, dates, um, prickly pears, what do they call it? Not aloe, but oh, whatever they make tequila out
The,
of,
the
the
agave?
the agave root, you know, um, especially mosquitoes. It was always a big staple. So, like here in the desert, it's funny. It's now we're starting to get into the part of the season where it's really getting going to be hot, and so it's funny that the desert, like in the when it really gets hot for some reason, it kills your appetite. It's the strangest thing. You just stop getting hungry, and you know, I'm one of those people who I can shovel down food. So for me, it's very weird. But once the summer starts, your appetite goes away. Then oh, and there's the fruit that the saguaro cactus makes that are on top, which are really really amazing and such. And there's ways you prepare all these things, and acorns are everywhere, and you've got different kind of oils you can get. Well, basically, the desert starts feeding you like a strict carbohydrate diet in like the winter and in the summer, but you're not hungry either. It's so strange. It's like I've learned here more than anywhere I've lived that as the extremes we have here in weather, as we go through the kind of odd seasons we have, the desert keeps going, eat this, eat this, eat this, eat this. Here's your dandelion greens. Here's your purslane. Here's this, here's that. Here's your miner's lettuce. It's funny, but you can walk across this earth and nature will give you the perfect food for the environment you're in. So I'm just wondering, how do you, what is diet like for the Neo-Aboriginal, like the natural human, as I call it? Because like right now, you're in a house, you know, and so when you're in nature, I know you're kind of hunting and gathering out there, but then what do you do when you're kind of on pavement? Because I think especially, I know I'm going off on kind of a tangent here, but it's like archaeologists, they love poop. They love to find old human poop because they can see what we ate, you know? And
Yeah, yeah.
it seems like humans, the further you go back, they ate, you know, frogs, seeds, fruits. Like humans, I think it was estimated up to like 1,200 or 1,500 different items a year they would eat, and now we eat like what, 6 different things maybe. So anyway, kind of a tangent, but when you're out in your land, how are you living? How are you eating? And then how is that opposed to when you were home?
So if I'm on my land, I'm actually blessed. There's food everywhere. There's rabbits, hares, and pigeons, and pheasants, and fish in the river, and there's wild food in absolute abundance. You know, there are deers around as well. Yeah, there's an absolute abundance of natural food. And then when I'm back in town, I'm actually really lucky. The area where we live is we've got amazing food around us. We've got incredible organic butchers. The town I live in is called Totnes. It's quite an alternative area. So there's loads of like organic health food shops and stuff like that. But I'm actually really interested in nutrition. Like, you know, health to me is really, really top of my priority list. So I actually eat quite a lot of raw minced beef. I eat quite a lot of raw meat. Don't know why. I just like eating raw meat. So I eat raw hearts. I eat raw lamb hearts and raw liver, and then I eat quite a lot of fish, like mackerel and sort of oysters, that sort of thing. Bone broth, big fan of bone broth. Obviously, wild food. For me, the things I try and stay away from is polyunsaturated fat. So I don't have obviously any oils, no vegetable oils of any kind. I try not to eat too much sort of seeds and nuts that are high in polyunsaturated fat, and just any processed food I just stay away from totally. I try and, if I'm in the modern world, I try and eat like I'm still in nature. That's kind of my rule. If it looks like it's just come out of nature and it's not been for a process, then I'm happy eating it. But I know the danger in our food supply now, a lot of people are not aware of, is polyunsaturated fat. I don't know if you know, if you've like looked into how bad that stuff is.
Not exactly. I mean, I know that I like most of the fat that I use, let's say for, oh, well, for instance, like in the morning, one of my, favorite things is, as they call it, bulletproof coffee or caveman coffee. Like, yeah, I drink coffee. I do, I do. Biodynamic coffee, by the way. And, I'll put a big old chunk of grass-fed butter in that, and mix that up. And I guess it is, and yeah, and that, I went from vegetarian to that, a good number of years ago, and that's life changing. So once you get that that experience of the wonderful grass-fed butter in your coffee, it's like, woo, it's a new world. And I do my best to not cook with oil, or if I do, I mean, I'll admit there is some avocado oil here, but I I do know that our animal fats tend to be where it's at.
Yeah, the saturated fat is really, really good. It's got the saturated fat has zero risk of oxidizing, because the trouble with these polyunsaturated fats is if you cook with them, well, when they're made, they get highly oxidized. And then when you cook with them, they oxidize even more. And then even when they go through metabolism in the body, they get super oxidized. And that's what our cell membranes are made out of. And when the cell membrane gets damaged, that's what part of like how you produce your energy, like the ATP. And then when the ATP gets damaged, that's when you get all of these problems like cell necrosis and DNA mutations. Because I've been researching a lot into macular degeneration over the last 6 months. Because there's 197 million people worldwide now with macular degeneration. That's when the blood vessels in the back of the retina, they punch up through and they deposit like deposits, and you get like a central blind spot in the middle of the eye where the macula gets damaged. And it's 4.5 million people right now blind in both eyes from macular degeneration. And it's been linked to these polyunsaturated fats and the danger and, well, the damage they do to our mitochondria. It's crazy, isn't it? There's 197 million people with
It's
macular degeneration, and there's like 7 people with coronavirus.
Oh, I know. I think today it was like it's down to 5 people have the corona. Yeah, yeah. That's really something that you mentioned that, because if you tell a person that, hey, saturated fat is where it's at, man, try it out. I got some over here. They'll they'll oftentimes run in fear, because they'll go, no. Uh, what's your feeling on coconut oil? Is that probably a baddie too,
So
or is that
coconut oil is the best oil on the planet.
okay?
It's actually more saturated than butter, beef tallow, suet, lard. It's the most saturated fat on the planet, which is why I think it's being demonized. Yeah, so coconut oil and palm oil are the 2 most saturated plant fats and oils on the planet. And then it's things like butter and suet, beef tallow, lard, those kind of things. But yeah, coconut's the best.
Yeah.
Amazing. The
Yeah.
ones to stay away from is rapeseed, almond oil, canola oil, safflower oil, sunflower oil, soybean oil, grapeseed, all those polyunsaturated fats are super dangerous. People have no idea.
Oh, it's funny. And the eye degeneration I'm talking about, the retinal degeneration, and that's been linked to the fats. That's really something. Um, it's amazing. So it seems like the Neo-Aboriginal diet would be possibly what you would find in your nature, what is there, and then if you can't, and if you cannot find it, simulate it the best you can, because I mean, I don't go out with my addle and like get a deer every other week. I mean, that's just a bit, for one thing, it's illegal. I can't do that. And part of the year, the desert here, it's really deadly. It's not exactly fun. You gotta be careful. We lose a lot of people out there. It can kill you really fast if you're not aware of how to exist in 120 degrees plus. So yeah, it's intense. It's intense. And so I like what you're saying about organ meats, and that's one that really I wish would make a bit more of a comeback. So some of the things you're mentioning, it sounds like, have you ever read like Dave Osprey's books, or the Bulletproof Exec guy, Dave Osprey?
Yeah, I've not read any of his books, but I've seen a lot of interviews with him. I know exactly
Yes.
the guy you're on about. Yeah.
Yeah, he's along those.
My go-to sort of things for health and nutrition was when I read Weston A. Price's book on the nutrition and physical degeneration. That was really good. And there's another guy that's popped up on the scene. He's called Chris Kenobi, and he was an ophthalmologist who wanted to understand, what macular degeneration was all about, because, nobody could heal macular degeneration and nobody knew what caused it. And if you don't know what's causing it, then how can we stop it? And, he had an experience where he had really bad arthritis, and he went on a paleo diet and his arthritis was gone in like 10 days. And he was like, wow, well, I wonder if that means that diet, macular degeneration could be a dietary thing. So he researched, and like the research he's done on it is unbelievable. And his research is absolutely 100% proof that polyunsaturated fats are the cause of macular degeneration. Because in 1851 was when Hermann von Helmholtz invented the ophthalmoscope, which was the little device that ophthalmologists used to look into the back of the eye. So for like 30 or 40 years after this device was invented, they were, making atlases of the back of the retina, writing 500-page books on, all of what they were discovering about the eye and all the conditions of the eye. And for 40 years, there was not one case of macular degeneration at all written anywhere in the whole of the world's literature. It literally only popped up in around the sort of 1940s, after we'd been consuming these polyunsaturated fats. After about 30 years is when macular degeneration kicks in. It's like an incubation period of that long. And it's the same with heart disease, cancer, Alzheimer's, diabetes. All of these things were non-existent in the like 1900s. Like there's no diabetes whatsoever. You can't find any cases of it at all. No macular degeneration, very little cancer, hardly any obesity, none of these things. It's all came about, since we've been mucking about with the food.
And yeah, I think
yeah.
that diabetes is like that. I forget I believe that I read where really there was no diabetes until there was milled flour, or something like that. Like it's a result of basically grain and milling grain and flour is what I think I read that somewhere, and that would make sense ultimately, because that's when we went from hunter gathering to strictly processed grain in bread. Like, hey, I love bread too. I mean, it's a wonderful, amazing thing. But I do eye it with suspect. I'm like, I don't know about that. That might be what is destroying society over there.
Yeah. I mean, we're fed so much wheat,
Mm.
Most of our, most of the diet is carbs and wheat, massive monocropping. But yeah, I just
And
stay away from the polyunsaturated fat, and I think you're going to be all good, because you look at some of our ancestors ate, mostly carbohydrate diets all the time, and they had really good health. But it's because of the fat content of the carbohydrate diet that we're eating now. This seems to be where all the damage is done. This
oh,
fatty
completely.
acid. Yeah,
And
it's called the
also,
linoleic acid. It's called, which is the high omega-6 polyunsaturated fat. Linoleic acid is where our cell membranes are supposed to be made out of, like EPA and DHA and oleic acid, arachidonic acid, the hexahedrohonic acid. But yeah, we're just being poisoned with these polyunsaturated fats, and not many people know about it, unfortunately.
no, they don't. And that's a huge one where we talk about the COVID thing and immunity. And one thing that always gets me is, and I don't want to sound judgmental, but maybe I'm a little bit, not in a negative way, but I'm surprised that humans have any immune system at all. I mean,
Yeah,
because you look at like the death people are shoveling into their necks, constantly. And we talk about, like, let's say a pandemic, whether one thinks it exists or not. I tend not to, honestly, of course, but it's just, I'm like, it just seems like every human right now, with like the diet that they're on, I could say here in the Western world, they're just targets. I mean, it's like, if we keep going on the route that we're going to have to all stay inside in little bubbles and just have immunity, pumped into us via shots every year. Because, I mean, are you ever surprised that some people's bodies, that many bodies, that they keep functioning? That
I can't believe it. I can't believe it. It's like, I'm amazed that just goes to show how resilient we really are, and how much the human body wants to heal and wants to survive. Like, you could give somebody, somebody could be in their 80s and not very well, but if they went onto a perfect diet, yeah, they're not going to live, forever, but they would, after a few days, they would start feeling relief. It just goes to show how much the human body is always trying to return back to as much balance and as much health as it actually possibly can. It's an amazing thing. But yeah, I'm astounded that we can drink as much alcohol as we can and breathe in as much car fumes and be poisoned by mercury fillings and be in contact with loads of plastics and carpet dust and all sorts of junk in the food and the sugar and the wheat. And I'm amazed that we're we're even living as long as what we are. So yeah,
Oh, I agree. It does show you how incredibly strong, how resilient, like you're saying, the human body is. Because I'm like, wow,
incredible.
yeah. When I go out and about looking, walking around, I'm like, man, like, when you just look at and that's something that I hope to help people with ultimately, by inspiring them about such topics, is that you see so many people who are just sort of huddling along. They're just sick. They're like, what is it with everybody around, like, their late 20s? Everyone has a limp. You ever notice that? Like, why are you limping? You're 33 years old. Why does everybody in our society look like they, used to be like in the Roman Legion? And they were like pro football players or something, and they have all these injuries, and I'm like, what? And you know how they got them? From sitting on their ass. They got them from really repetitive stress injuries and
Yeah.
inaction. They're injuries
When
from not
people have
moving.
got an injury, when people have got an injury, they're told to rest. Like, I'll tell you just like a quick story of how I learned what the human body really loves. So my wife used to be a really dead keen surfer. We spent more time in the water than what we did on land, and she got a really bad neck and back injury from surfing some very big waves. She was a lot braver on waves than what I was, I'll admit that. But so she got a really bad neck and back injury, and obviously she was, wanting to rest it and try and heal it. And, time's gone on, it's not getting better. So we've tried Bowen technique, we've tried craniosacral, we've tried acupuncture. We're trying everything we possibly can. And it went on for quite a long time. And then one day, some friends that were living near us when we were living in this field, they were doing like CrossFit sort of training, you know, like lifting kettlebells and climbing up ropes and doing pull-ups and stuff like that. And they were so into it, like their sort of motivation for it rubbed off on my wife, and she was like, "Oh, I'm going to go training with these guys, and if you're up for it." So I was like, "Yeah, I'll come. I'm into that sort of thing." And you know, she's got a bad back, so you would think any normal would think lifting weights and doing pull-ups and stuff like that isn't going to be good for your back. And on the first morning of doing this, like all starting to lift the weights, I could hear my wife's back like popping and cracking, and we were doing what we're doing. And after that, by the next day, she said, "That's the best my back has felt for a couple of years." And that's going completely against what most people think. Most people think if you've got an injury or you're hurting, you need to rest it, is where actually the human body loves movement. You know, if your muscles are not trained, they get weak. If you don't expose yourself to the cold, you can't handle the cold. You know, it loves the resilience. It thrives, you know, on the stimulation. And that's what I know about it. Like, you don't get bone density by not doing anything. You know, you get bone density by training your body. But I observed this straight away. I was like, oh my God. So I've just watched my wife go through this whole journey of trying to heal. And in the end, you know, just going out there and just getting your body moving and lifting weights and, you know, like exercising it is actually what helps in the end. That was a big lesson for me.
No, I get it. I totally get it. So many things are counterintuitive, like I've heard some, more holistic doctors talk about when you have a temperature, why do you want to knock it down with ibuprofen or something? They're like, no, your body has a temperature because it's getting rid of stuff. You don't want to subdue that. And so,
yeah.
and that's according to some doctors who said that. And so many things are directly counterintuitive. Like for me, I have I can have a stiff neck sometimes and such. And one of the things that helps more than anything is bench pressing. I know it's a very mechanical, movement, but still, there's just something about getting the bench there and just, and you'll hear it just, everything just realigns and you go, yes. And I know it works. It's something. Well, you mentioned getting in the cold, and I also wondered, have you worked with the Wim Hof Method?
Yeah, a lot.
A
Yeah,
lot.
I discovered Wim Hof a few years back, and straight away I could tell just from watching him for a few minutes, like, no way, this guy's the real deal. He's not doing it for money. He's not doing it for fame. Like, he is the most, he's one of the most genuine human beings I'd ever seen. So as soon as I saw him, I was like, yeah, this is good. And I was looking at testimonials from people who'd done it, and you could see the results they were having. So I started playing around with the breathing, and then I got a wheelie bin, which is like these big bins we have in the UK, which they pick up rubbish up. They're quite big. So I've gone out and bought a brand new one of those and put it in the front garden so I can fill it up with water. And it was in the winter time, so it's really, really cold. So I'd get up every morning, do my breathing technique, and then I jump in the wheelie bin and sort of sit in there for as long as I could. And it was amazing. But I can tell you how amazing this, getting in the cold is. It's pretty much saved my wife's life. She woke up one morning, she was pregnant with my second daughter at the time. She woke up one morning and her whole left arm had gone completely blue. She'd had two 12-centimeter blood clots in the vein on her shoulder. So she got rushed into intensive care in an ambulance, and she pulled through. But when she came home, she was having to be on fragment injections 3 times a day, which is basically paraffin. You're just injecting paraffin into your bloodstream to thin your blood out, because that's what it is. Your blood was too thick for some reason. So she's on these blood thinners, and what she finds is when she starts to exercise, her arm was going blue again, because obviously the oxygen's not getting around the blood flow so well. So she can't exercise, so she has to slow down and then like let the oxygen catch up, and then she can exercise again. And this was happening, like every day. She'd go out, she'd push the pushchair, and her arm starts going blue, so she'd have to relax, and she'd start feeling a bit faint. And Around that time is when I was getting in the wheelie bin every morning doing the Wim Hof Method. So my wife starts getting in the bin, the same as me, getting in the cold water. And from going in the cold water, just for the first day, she got in the cold, stayed in there for like 30 seconds, 45 seconds. And then that afternoon, she starts pushing the pushchair up the hill and her arm's not going blue so much. So the next morning, she gets in the cold water again, stays in there for a little bit longer. That afternoon goes out, she can push the pushchair for even longer and her arm's not going blue. So she carries on going in the water. When she has a scan a couple of weeks later, the blood clots are gone. Like going in the cold water, the effect it's had on the vascular system, like, because I did quite a little bit of research into it. So when you get in the cold, all of the blood moves into the larger internal veins to conserve heat. So they all have to expand loads. So this is what it was doing. It was expanding and contracting. So it was actually clearing. It must have cleared the blood clots out of her shoulder and stopped her arm from going blue. And she, just had to stop taking the blood thinners. It's amazing. I've seen testimonials from people with autoimmune diseases, blood clots, cancer, all sorts of illnesses that have started this Wim Hof method, and it's done wonders. It's the one thing I recommend to like everybody to get into. It's so good for you. Getting in the cold is, and doing the breathing is amazing.
Uh,
I've lost audio for you.
I'm here. I am sorry about that. Yeah, it's one of those things that is counterintuitive. At first, there's a lot of things that are counterintuitive at first, but like with Wim Hof breathing, the Wim Hof method, I'm gonna link to this in the show notes. Is definitely there's it's an 11-minute YouTube of Wim Hof, and it has an animation, and it's metered. I love it, and it's 3 rounds of 30 breaths, and then holding your breath, and then inhaling and holding, and of course he has like 2 different courses online you can buy, but really when it comes down to it, he's got a lot of free content. You can sign up for a little like mini series that he has that's free on his site, I believe, and it kind of covers the whole thing. It covers the big picture, what you need to know to get started. So he gives it all away free. If you want to go further, there's more courses. But when I first started the Wim Hof breathing, and there's something about this because a lot of us don't breathe. We don't. It's very shallow. A lot of our trauma, our stress is there. We're very shallow. We're not breathing. And with Wim Hof method, you're breathing in, belly, chest, head, relax, belly, chest, head. You do, like 30 times, then breathe out or breathe in, hold it, and then. So I won't get into it all here, but when I first started the Wim Hof breathing, I found it to be an insanely difficult emotional thing to do. Like for me, my first barrier was emotional. I had to like kind of almost like be on my hands and knees and just like it was like hyperventilating. it was really something. So much of us is inhibited by our breath when we start doing that Wim Hof breathing. So I would just people like if you want to get into the Neo-Aboriginal life path, one of the first things you got to do is start breathing. And it can be for some really difficult. It may bring up emotions, trauma, fear, but it's how you let them out. I mean, how have you experienced the Wim Hof breath? Was it always easy, or did you find that for me, if I'm tense, if I'm carrying some stuff, those first couple of rounds, it's going to come out, and that can be hard. But then, you just start, you're on a rocket ship to Pluto after that.
Yeah. Well, it's been the cold for me, which is how I've had my real emotional connection to. Obviously, when my wife got taken off in an ambulance because her arm's gone blue, and I had no idea what was going to happen. So I was in a pretty stressed state. So it was going in the cold water, which was really helping me, because I know that's how Wim got into the cold, because his wife jumped out the story window and killed herself. And it was, that's what you know, that deep trauma for him is what drew him to the power of the cold, because it would bring him the peace. Because when you're in that really cold water, you can't think about all the things that are causing you the stress. You just have to be in that moment and sort of focus beyond the power of the cold. So like for me, in that time of stress, it was the cold that was really where I was able to find my peace. It was, you know, keeping me in a balanced state. And if I'd find myself getting, you know, real emotional again, I'd just go back in the cold and it would completely center me again, like totally. I never really found, you know, the breathing for me, I didn't really have an issue with. I've always been really quite active. So straight away, as soon as I saw, you know, the Wim, I started kind of doing these, you know, sort of big breaths, and I didn't really have an issue with that. But the cold for me was it was a big one. You know, I've always been cold water as well. I've always found really quite a full-on thing. You know, getting in cold water for me is quite a task. But if I can beat my mind and get in there, it's amazing. You know, the focus that you have to have. You know, you have to have that complete control of your mind when you're in there. But that's where I found the peace, was in the cold.
Yeah, that's one that I still struggle with. You know, I can do the breathing, but the cold is, whoo, that's difficult. I would really
Yeah,
love to find a tub of cold water I could just jump in. Like I'd love to find here the Russians call it a banya, I guess, and it's pretty much you have your sauna. They have a unique sauna, and after that you jump in the cold pool. You know, and I find that just going like, okay, I'm going to jump in, is easier than like a cold shower. To me is just kind of torture. I don't like it, you know, but if I could just jump in cold water, yeah. So I'm still, yeah, I guess maybe the next challenge for me will be the cold or something, because the breathing was the first challenge. And so, well, this is great because, you know, um, in our country over here, when there was in America, when there was Jonestown, like one of the first European settlements, there's written in people's journals that while they were all freezing their butts off, they had all their stuff and their fire going, that the natural humans, the Indians, would just have like a loincloth or some light little thing on, and they'd be like, come on now, it's not that cold.
yeah,
So there's something to surrender to your environment. Like we do live in very we love our environmentally controlled environments, and they are pleasant, but they're not exactly good for us necessarily.
yeah. I think that's another reason why our immune systems are not so good. It's because we're just not exposing ourselves to the cold. I'm sure that that connection to the cold is, you know, has a big connection to our immune systems. One of my friends used to live outdoors all the time, you know, really cold weather, and he never used to get sick. He never really ate that great of food or looked after himself, but he was always outside, no matter how freezing it was. This guy was always sleeping outside, and he would never get ill, never, ever, ever get ill. I've
I've
lost you all.
oftentimes, yeah, sorry about that, pushing my button backwards. I've oftentimes felt that one of the things that has kept elders that I've known alive, you know, here we kind of call it like the baby boomer generation, which are getting pretty darn old at this point. You know, one of the things that gave them longevity and some health and longevity is not the way they eat now. That no, it's not good. But so many of their formative years, of their younger years, all there really was clean food. So they weren't in the environment, but they were eating, you know, eggs from pasture-raised chickens nearby, you know, pasture-raised meats. There was more butter, just like maybe their food choices were more limited, like, you know, a russet potato, but it was an organic russet potato. So like it's kind of the same thing as you're saying. Like, I think we have a generation here which is getting old and kind of beginning to pass away, that their longevity came from a younger life of healthier living. Even if they weren't doing it on purpose, their food was so much cleaner.
Yeah, way more nutrient dense, had way better minerals in it, and yeah, people just not getting the minerals they need nowadays. Like the amount of magnesium our bodies burn through. That's why I eat the organs, is to get all the bioavailable minerals that are in them. Because it's so difficult to get the minerals. A lot of the hybridized foods that people are eating, they don't have as nowhere near as the amount of vitamins in them, and nowhere near the amount of minerals that all the food used to have.
Oh
And
yeah, our soil definitely, suffers along those lines. And it's one of the funny things is, so I was an organic farmer for a couple of years in Colorado, and one of the things that was difficult is many people who are, vegans, especially, bless you, my vegan brothers and sisters, you're not giving you a hard time, but many vegetarians and vegans think that it's this thing that it's good for the planet. And I'm like, no, 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 no. I mean, large organic farming, organic farming is, people got to watch out for those monocrops, because no, they're not. It's very challenging to something I learned is that nature does not want to grow one thing in a large area, and it will do everything it can to kill it. And it's going to wreck the soil. It's not natural. So how do you feed that many people without those monocrops, without farming? I don't know, but definitely, yeah, it is hard to get to have soil that can grow things that are going to give you those minerals, give you those nutrients, especially when what you're growing itself is extremely domesticated, is extremely like not very nutrient dense anyway. Like that's one of the important things of gathering in one's area, and maybe growing some things that are native to your area in a garden if you can have them, along with, there's meat, but just thinking of like, plants specifically, what you can gather has in it what you cannot buy.
yeah, have a
Yeah,
mixture of the two, a mixture of the wild and then some that you get from the shop. But yeah.
definitely. And so I don't want to keep you too long. You've been gracious with your time. Thank you for hanging out so long.
Oh, no problem. No, you're welcome anytime.
Yeah, I was gonna say there's a couple other questions I want to ask you, but also, so I love this little theme that we've got going. I've always thought that um, primal fitness, when I go to a gym, which I do sometimes, I always feel a little funny. Gyms are neat, and it's fun to go and do things, and you can do CrossFit, and you can do all kinds of stuff. You can like, throw the big ropes around, and you can have your strap, and you can have your weights. But it always felt like it's really a strange world we live in, where you have to go do all these strange things to stay in shape, because it seems like life should do this for us, and it used to, and now it doesn't. And so, like, if a person, let's say, wanted to have some kind of a natural workout, what do you think that would look like? I mean, for one thing, I always just say, get off the flat land, go and hike, walk in nature, especially off the trail, because that, I think, is one of our exercises that harmonizes us in so many ways. But really, hiking will make you strong. But what else can a person do? Like you mentioned the kettlebell. What kind of like natural human exercise can a person do in their home?
Well, obviously, when I'm out in nature, I love climbing trees or doing pull-ups and stuff off trees. But obviously, in the home, animal movements I would recommend the most. If people go on YouTube and just put in like human animal movement, there's that Ido Portal guy. Don't know if you ever come across him.
I have not. No, it's amazing.
Ah, but yeah, like human animal movement, that's what I'd recommend to do, because it's all a lot more natural movement, and you're moving body in lots of different ways, and obviously you don't need any equipment to do it at all. And from my own experience and from what I've looked at, I would say it's probably the best movements you can do for your body. Or just try and come up with a new movement every single day. Every time you move your body, try and move it in a different way or mimic animals. But if I'm out in nature, I'll be swinging in trees and picking up rocks and balancing on stuff and getting in the cold water. And check out animal movements. If people are stuck at home, then check out animal movement. That's amazing.
Oh my gosh, I'll try to find some of those and link to them. I think also for our eyes, there's actually an exercise, and I find it maybe a little bit easier in nature, but you can do it anywhere. If you go for a walk, use your peripheral vision.
Yeah.
like we don't use it, but it exists. And I would say that if a person just walked for 50 feet down the street, if you're in nature, all the better. But rather than just look ahead and focus on something, especially like our feet, 5 feet ahead of us, no, look straight ahead. Don't necessarily focus on anything in particular, and feel, use your hands to see where it is, and see with your whole vision at once. And you will find that you are exhausted so fast, because that's, I believe, how our ancestors used to see. And we don't do that
That's how I
anymore.
think, believe it or not.
Yes.
That's actually how my preferred vision is now. I'm pretty much in wide angle vision all the time. I just, yeah, it's just natural like that now. I'm just more like that than what I am focusing on things, is where I used to be always focused. But now I'm naturally in that splatter vision. I always see things, always see little mice running across the road, or if it's buzzards in the sky, or, you just respond to movement so much. Once you spend a lot of time hunting, you just get so used to being in that splatter wide angle vision, and so used to picking up on movement that, I don't know, somehow I've just stayed in that focused sort of, well, stayed in that wide view. Love it.
No, I like that. I'm so glad you said that, because yes, it's something to cultivate. I'm not quite there yet, but I'm working on that. As wide angle vision. That I do. I've always believed that was our natural vision, because why wouldn't you want to use it all? We
Yeah,
just don't. We just haven't needed to. So we just see right here this little, like pencil eraser. That's all you really need. And we're also not used to seeing anything far away. It's a computer monitor. It's a phone. It's a wall. But really, our vision kind of sucks after 10 feet. you know and you're not going to see the saber-toothed tiger if it's over there. And you're missing out on a lot. So something that speaks to me that we're saying, that we've been kind of went down a little path, I like it, is I always like to give people some ideas of what they can do to be inspired to do something. And so it sounds like if a person wanted to be a more natural human being, like be that, find that Neo-Aboriginal power, that strength is, we'll get on to hunting and gathering, but maybe some, other than that, Wim Hof, breathe, get in the cold, um, Joe Dispenza, read those books, do those meditations, get attached, get back to your center. I'm not sure if John recommends it, but to me, Bulletproof Coffee in the morning, caveman coffee with that grass-fed butter in it and some coconut oil if you want, it will change your life. You will hit the day ready for, vigor. Organ meats, like we eat hamburger now, and they're always so proud. Oh, 88% lean, 99% lean. Forget that. If you can find a butcher, say, I want all the damn fat you can throw in there, and throw in some hearts and some testicle and tongue. Give me a brain. Give me all that good stuff. Get some organ meat in that hamburger. It's definitely a good way to start approaching it. And also, as an incredible discipline, animal movements. I'll link to that in the show notes. That's great. And then also practice to the extent that you can, safely, not while you're crossing the street. I always have to mention these things. Use that wide angle vision. Start to practice that. And don't be like crestfallen. Don't be down if it's exhausting, because it really is. It's definitely, it's a muscle you may not have used, and you may never have used. So if it's very difficult, just be happy that you are cultivating it, and it will open up so much more than just your vision to you. And then also, how do you feel about kettlebell? Just swinging that kettlebell around.
Yeah, kettlebells are good. I mean, I'm into all of it. I'll happily climb in trees, or lift weights, or kettlebells, or do yoga, or just do like
Yes.
press-ups and pull-ups, or just do stretching. I'm up for all of it. I do a lot of body sort of conditioning as well, like the sort of monks do. I use a lot of sort of wooden beams, and like hit them with my palms and my arms, and do shin sort of training, a lot of conditioning, body dense, sort of bone density training, I guess it is. I'm
Oh,
really,
and
really into that.
yeah, and of course, I don't want to forget, hike, get off those flat surfaces, go and um, something I like is the barefoot shoes. If you're barefoot, great, that's cool. But if you're not, like the Vibram five toes,
Yeah, barefoot shoes are great.
yeah, something where you can, because something that people may not realize is that your toes are like your hands. And when you put on Vibrams, which are weird at first, and everyone looks at you, you know what I mean? I understand. But when you put those on and you realize that many people don't realize as you start to walk, you will find that you grab the earth. And like when you go up and down stairs, you grab that edge. It's like it is such, I think, something that will definitely really help people find that Neo-Aboriginal source in their body, that is that connection with your feet, because we put our feet in these things that deaden our perception. And when you let your feet be alive, if you can walk safely barefoot across the grass, especially if you can wear the Vibrams, the more you can go barefoot on organic surfaces, you're going to find that you find a connection that you never expected. Have you ever gotten feedback like that when a person begins to go barefoot in nature or Vibrams in nature, that they go, I didn't know I had two other hands. I never felt the world that way.
If I've ever shown people how to make their own moccasins, and then they put their moccasins on and they start walking around in them, you see them going, oh my God, this is amazing. Like I can actually move my whole foot. I can feel everything. Like, are they? Yeah. If you show somebody how to make some moccasins and you see people walking around in them, that's like, yeah, it's a big changer. You can just see, yeah, you can just see it on people's faces. They're like, oh my God, I can actually move. I can feel the ground. Wow, this is amazing. Yeah. Moccasins
Yeah.
are amazing footwear.
Yeah, moccasins are perfect too, and they'll get you a lot less weird looks. Where Vibram five toes will get you, moccasins are a bit more acceptable. But yeah, it is amazing how many people don't know. We're kind of sold this bill of goods that our feet are not perfect, and I think there's a great book that came out a couple years ago about barefoot running. Oh, I forget what it was called, but it really started a lot of thought along these lines, especially with the Vibram five toes and running. It's called Born to Run, or I forget what it was called, but and it's funny how we've forgotten that our feet are perfect. Like, why do we wear heels? That's totally ridiculous. Like, there's
Yeah.
no reason that we should be wearing heels on anything, you know. And the natural human naturally kind of walks ball of their foot, then puts their heel down slightly, then takes the next step, and it and the damage that it does to the body walking heel toe first is crazy. So yeah, moccasins or five toes, get those zero balance shoes, those barefoot shoes, and oh my gosh, that I tell you, you know, that if a person's not already doing it, that is going to change their perception, because we were meant to live with our feet and we don't. They're just totally out of the picture. Feet don't exist anymore.
My advice to people is to like get on YouTube or something maybe, and like if they're thinking about getting into some outdoor skills or nature skills, is start to just look at all the different variety of skills and find the one which attracts you the most. Like some people are really love the flint knapping, some people really like making baskets, or some people really like weaving. I really, really like tanning leather. That's one of the skills that I'm really drawn to. It'd be good for people to like look at all the different skills and find the one that really, really grabs you. And then once you're passionate about that, I just know that like all the other skills will, follow from there. But it's good to find a skill that, one that, really, really grabs you, because it's such a variety of skills that, are involved in, living in nature. And I just think that everybody can find a skill that they're passionate about. And once they're passionate about one of the skills, it just opens you up to that world.
Yeah, I think that, and a person might be surprised what it is, because it might be like one thing I wanted to mention was have you felt that one of the ways, this is just kind of a crazy one, but well, it's a crazy show. I'm a bit out there, so that's how it goes. But have you ever felt that uh, it seems like we naturally stayed in shape in the past? You go way back, and I think part of that was practicing self-defense. Always has felt like, to me, one of the ways that we stayed in shape. Like you look at all through history, everybody has their martial arts, and they've always existed. And it seems that it's not about being, violent, but just knowing how to protect yourself. And along with like primitive skills and survival skills that we're talking about, also it's being able to defend yourself, and that being a skill that you learn and you continue. It can be a great form of physical fitness, and then also confidence. And one can even call it a primitive skill. It's definitely a skill of the body, like yoga. And it just seems that from my study, every Aboriginal culture I've ever come across, no matter where I go, they had a method of defense that they practiced, and that was part of how they stayed in shape.
Yeah. Yeah, I think so. Yeah, and the discipline as well that goes with it, and the connection you have to your body. It's making you more aware of your body and getting you to understand your body. But yeah, it's all it's all kind of like a package, isn't it? To being able to defend yourself, being able to move like faster or stronger, and being more responsible, being more connected. It's just all of it. Yeah. Yeah, I would have loved to have seen what our ancestors would have actually done years ago. I mean, like a really, really, really long time ago. I would have loved to have seen if they were doing like any kind of exercises, or what stretches they were doing, or what, if they did practice any kind of defense or anything. I'd love to be able to look back in time, thousands of years, to actually see what they did.
I
Because I'm
know.
sure the human mind back then was so different.
Oh, so different, so different. Yeah, I would love to see that too. And I think it's something that we're all sort of with that Neo-Aboriginal ideal. Like we know what worked better and we can see it, and so we're just kind of. I think that's, to me, a feeling that I have of a positive future, where we're going to figure these things out and reincorporate them into our future. I would like to think so. I love that idea of the Neo-Aboriginal, like the natural human. And it's strange that we're in this time now where everyone's had to be quiet, where society kind of shut down, because I think for so many people, there's this inward, oh, all of a sudden they hit that source and they go, boom, life reconfigures itself, sort of. So I think that it is a whole package. It is. I would love to see that too. I would love, like you're saying, to go back thousands of years and just see, like, what was life like. But the funny thing is that wouldn't be right today. I really think that in our evolution, there's something better than we were. We're just way off course right now. That's part of it.
Yeah, I'm fascinated to see where, how this is all going to play out over the next few years. And yeah, it's going to be an interesting journey.
Definitely. And to wrap things up, so it's always very easy to talk about hunting and gathering. And especially because many people are thinking, well, gathering, I'm going and getting blackberries, and I'm going and getting this and this and this, and that can be for food, or that can be for medicine, that can be for utility. It can be for a lot of things. But like you did mention that you do hunt, you know, and, for me being a hunter, that's a big one. As far as, I know to some people it might be counterintuitive, but when approached with reverence, that has been one of my, uh, wow, you might say, greatest connections. When we hunt, and you can say hunting and gathering is the same. So when you're gathering and using that whole vision and you're gathering, that's hunting. It's turned on. It's turned on then too. So that does count. And for some people, that's what they're going to do. They're not going to hunt things that are animals. They're going to hunt other things, and that works too. But do you feel that when you're like hunting the animal, like for me, there's something that uh, really deeply turns on, that is turned off in people? I mean, that just, that to me is a big wow. And it's funny thing is if you want to see, is society domesticated, if you want to know if they are or not, just tell them you hunt.
Yes, it's not a very popular word these days for some reason. But yeah, the state, yeah, the state that I'm in if I'm hunting an animal to if I'm, you know, going out and gathering plants is very different. Normally, the hunt is normally built up to there's like a moment you're sort of working towards. You know, you're normally trying to find something and then tracking it down, and then it's obviously getting closer, or you're just being aware. But it's normally building up to this moment where there's you know, either a release or an aiming or an intense focus, all sort of involved. Is where plants is more, you know, but the actual hunting's a build up. But unless you've actually hunted yourself, or you can't explain it to people, like, you know, what's going on inside. Like, you know, it's all about the state, I guess. That for me, that state of, you know, absolute presence and focus and absolute awareness, and there's nothing else like it. And you couldn't explain it to anybody who's never experienced it. But it's what humans are built for, you know. We are built for that. We're just designed for being in nature and being in that environment and looking at it and responding to it and looking at the stimulation and the movement. Yeah, it's amazing.
And I like the way you put that. We are designed to be in nature. We really are. And that state of the hunter, it definitely does turn something on. And, you know, for some it's going to be gathering, and that's good enough. That turns you on. But hunting really has always been something for me that is very powerful, primal turn on, I would call it. You know, something clicks on this switch, and the more time you spend in it, the better. And for somebody who maybe isn't so sure, they go, I'm not sure if I can do that, or if I want to do that, whatever, they have their uncertainty, or it's very new to them. Realize you can always hunt without killing something. So, you know, part of it is the hunt. You know, could you, if you go out in nature, can you sneak up on a rabbit? You know what I mean? Can you get close to an antelope? Can you? So I know it sounds odd, but many people are sort of like hunter curious, like they're not up to it. Like if they had to start out with the intent of actually killing something, they just would not. And killing maybe isn't the best word, but they won't do it if that's the case. If they're going out with the, you know, I'm going to go and, you know, kill something. I guess say kill is a sloppy word, but go out and just sneak up on something.
Yeah, go out and touch something. Go out and touch an animal. Make it a mission to go out and touch an animal.
That is a great one. Oh my gosh. So along with that list, like Wim Hof, Joe Dispenza, you know, caveman coffee, organ meats, make sure you get your minerals, wide angle vision, you know, you got your kettlebell, do some yoga, do animal movements along with all of that also. And do this safely. Okay, people, like, I just want to say that. Be careful what you're sneaking up on, all right? I just want to tell you something. An elk can kick your ass really bad, and so can a moose. So start small, okay? Start small. You know, touch a rabbit, whatever's in your environment. It's very, very true. You know, like go to the koi pond and be like, you know, gotcha. If you're not up to hunting, maybe that's something you have a curiosity about. You know, of course, go out and gather, yes. But if you're like the hunt of the animal, yeah, try and touch one. And I tell you what, there's no hunter that would not admire you if you told them that you touched an animal. They would give you that nod. I mean, they would say you're there. And you know, that might be it. But I tell you what, you're gonna feel like your bones are alive when you touch that animal.
Yeah.
You are. It's going to be a different life after that moment.
If anybody can also find a copy of Tom Brown Jr. wrote a book called Way of the Scout. If you can find a copy of that, it's a great book. Like once you've read that, you just want to go out in the woods and build like a little den or something. It's brilliant. It's really good for getting people inspired for like, you know, to get back out in nature, or, you know, just wanting to like sneak up and hide out on people or go and build a den or something like that. It's brilliant. Yeah, it's really good.
Definitely. Okay, so along with our list, read Way of the Scout, you know? And yeah, and there's something to be said for the hunt of finding an animal to view at a distance is quite a thing. You know, it really is. It's powerful. Well, John Hickman of the Primitive Ways YouTube channel, you know, I hope you are an inspiring person, and I hope, you know, through talking today and passing off some bullet points, I love to do that, you know, for people. Hey, here's how you can find that Neo-Aboriginal life way. Here's how you can connect to your instincts. Here's how you can get back to being a natural human. You know, we're talking to somebody who I feel has done it, has gone a long ways, has left a path for us to follow. And now we've got a little system. Hey, do these things, people, and you're going to feel better. You're going to have a whole darn new life that you just did not even expect. So any last words, John Hickman? Thank you so much for being on the show. It's been amazing.
You're welcome. Yeah, I just want to finish it off by I once heard these skills that I'm into. I once heard them described as the doorway to the earth. And that's the way I like to see these skills, is you carry them in your heart and your mind. And yeah, they're the doorway to the earth. If you know these skills, you're welcomed in. Yeah, I love that. They've been the most amazing thing I've ever come across, these skills. Like when I used to be a carpenter, like a modern carpenter, I used to have all these tools in a van and a workshop and all this stuff, and you have to keep it locked up and you have to have it all insured and all this sort of stuff. And what I love about this is you don't have to have any of it, you know. You can lose everything and then you can just go off and, you know, just slowly pick it all up again. It's just, you just carry it in your heart and your mind. I love it.
That's amazing. Well, we're going to call this show title will be Doorway to the Earth, you know. And all right, well, thank you so much for being on the show, John Hickman. It has been
thank you.
Amazing. Okay. And that's where I'll cut it off at the end. So I'll cut it off right there. So it's just you and me now. And usually like for a show cover, I'll just like do a screenshot of you. You know, we usually put your face out there. If you've got a picture, something that you'd like us to use, just send it to me and we'll use that. If not, I'm just probably going to screenshot you and we'll put you there as a show cover.
Cool.
All right.
Good to meet you.
Oh, good to meet you. Thank you so much. I mean, this is really amazing. I'm glad. I think this is, as the world is kind of, I mean, the world's always in a crazy place. The end is always near for all of us, of course, you know, but, you know, how would I put it? I think this is very helpful. It's something that we're really trying to do, because I think that exactly what we talked about today is something that, not just now when the world's a little bit crazy, but always, but especially now, I think people will find a bit of peace. They'll connect to that center, and some of these practices they can do to, rather than get lost in the fear and the craziness that they want us to, they can be in their center, in their source, in their power. Yeah. You know, because I think those who can get into their power and just ride this craziness out, when it's over, they're going to have a profound advantage.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You are listening to Radiant Creators, a collaborative project composed of people whose passion, purpose, and dedication requires forging their own unique path of empowerment and livelihood. A radiant creator isn't making a living, they are living.